And greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion, and you can tell from the title up there. I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. One episode in one season at a time. We're still in season 8, and this is episode 11. This is Debra at the Lodge. This one is written by Lou Schneider. And it's been a while since I mentioned it. On the DVD, this one actually has a commentary, which, just looking at the episodes, I wonder why. This one doesn't really stand out other than the premise, but it's because this is another one where we have a cameo from Ray Romano and Phil Rosenthal's fathers, Al and Max, respectively. We've seen them in previous episodes where they play friends of Frank's from the Lodge, and since this one is centered on the Lodge, here we go again. And of course, they actually join in for the commentary. There's not really a lot inciting, a lot that's interesting that they have to say. There's like a couple chuckle moments, but most of it is delving into the writing process, talking about the episode specifically, and like why certain scenes with these characters seem to end with like one person getting the zinger. It's because it has to do with the different tanks and trying to figure out how to end the scene actually on the set because they can't figure it out in the writer's room. Or it's like, yeah, this line doesn't seem like it'd be funny. It's just going to have to go down to the delivery. And that does end it sometimes. Sometimes a line doesn't sound funny, but then once you get to the writer's room, out of the writer's room and actually on set, it's funnier. Just like how sometimes you can write something, but it doesn't play as well when you actually go to say it out loud. And vice versa. Sometimes you can't say it, but then boom. But I think the first way is more common. Now, this is an episode I did not see in first run. I have no idea why I didn't see it first run. I just didn't. I saw the following episode, though, first run, but not this one. Now, my memories of it are hazy. I don't remember watching a lot, but having watched it, it's a pretty fun episode. The premise is pretty good, and it delivers on it. I don't know if I find myself watching it repeatedly, just randomly. Maybe a couple more views might change my mind a little bit on that, but it is one that I can definitely see myself still watching. It's not like some of the other ones where it's like, yeah, only if I'm marathoning, but... Now, the premise is that Frank's Lodge, the Caribou, they need some technological help. And of course, Debra, being the person that she is, who needs a reason to get out of the house, she is at least adequate with technology of 20 years ago. And she decides to go help. She gets there, she has fun with him, helps with the technology, and, there's a little bit of a singing thing. One of the gentlemen offers her a beer and all that, and it seems like they're having a fun time. Now, just from this setting scene, you can already tell where things are going to be going here. Especially when you know these characters and you know the people that Frank hangs out with. They are dirty old men. Now, things seem to be going good. Debra still wants to go over there. And then Ray gets a visit from Marie and her bridge club, sans Harriet Lickman. She's the only one who's not there. Which is interesting. The moment we see the bridge player, she's not there. And I didn't put these in the notes, so forgive me breaking out the phone for this one. We get her bridge club. We get Hilda, played by Bunny Levine. We get Mrs. Pesci, played by Norma Michaels. And we get Miss Lotman, played by Elsa Raven. Now, you can tell from the moment they walk in what their grievance is going to be. It's going to be with Debra. And Marie says she's going to be the one who handles it. And she brings up the fact that they do not like the fact that Debra is going down to the lodge and essentially turning the men on. In that regard, is a similar premise to the episode Debra at the Gym, where Ray had an issue with it. Which is why it's a little interesting that he doesn't seem to get the whole same thing here. Maybe it's because the way that they are bringing it up to him, like jilted wives. Like thinking that their husbands are having an affair with Debra when that's not the case. Of course, Ray's hearing them out, and the way that they're going on about it, it's like, okay. Though one of them, you hear that and you say that like it's a bad thing. Where the husband is so turned on that he can't stop pinching and, making smoochy faces at her. It's like, don't you want your spouse to be attentive to you like that? But I'm guessing they're at the part in their marriage where it's like every now and again that they get like that, or that's kind of out of character form, and that's why she's a little You would think she'd be pleasantly surprised, but I guess not. But it's played for humor. It's sitcom from 20 years ago. It's the writing conventions. If this was a more modern one, it'd probably be something to take a little bit more issue with. But Frank shows up eventually into this and interjects his 2 cents into it, where all the wives confront him about what him and the others at the lodge are doing. And Frank does point out things adequately, like he's been taking all of his heart pills this week. He's been taking all of his heart pills because he's had a 50-year love affair with Ham. Which, of course, Frank is definitely in that category, so he would know the impact that having a 50-year love affair with Ham, or as Ray mentioned in the one Christmas episode, his love affair with Bacon, is going to have on your ticker. So he would know that. And he does put the wives a little bit in their place. I don't really mean to put it like that, but that's essentially what it is. It's a back and forth, and he gets the upper hand on it for the most part. Now, Marie doesn't really say anything, and I think that's because at this point she knows she's not gonna get Frank with anything when it comes to that, plus the fact Debra is their daughter-in-law, and she knows that Frank's not gonna look at her that way. And there's also the possibility that when she brought it up to him in private, he put out like, no, I would never look at her that way. It's actually disgusting the way they're looking at her like this. So she's not gonna get on him. It's all a possibility there. But Frank waits until they all are gone in order to broach the subject with Ray. And the way that Peter Boyle tells this, you can definitely tell from that his character is conflicted with this, because it's on one hand family, and on the other hand his brother's in the Caribou. But he decides he's got to go with family. And he tells Ray what they've been doing while Debra's there and she doesn't notice, or she's leaving. And you can tell the way that he says it and the way that he's physically acting with his face, that it's killing him having to do this, but it's also disgusting him at one point that this is what they're doing, to the point where he has to try to generally describe it, what they look at. You know, starting with ankles, very chaste and old school, like, oh, like the ankles. Reminds me of that scene in R.I.P. Ankles. That's what does it for you. And he keeps going up, and then when he gets to her backside, he has to put it in a way that's a little bit more PG, because he just cannot fathom himself to describe looking at his daughter-in-law's backside. So he says derriere, and it works for the scene where he's like, don't make me go any higher. And he even puts it, she's like my daughter. It's like, it's all disgusting to him. To use a more classical analogy, it's a little incestuous, kind of like how Hamlet viewed the marriage of his uncle to his mother, his father's brother with the brother's former sister-in-law. It's like, yeah, even though there's no blood ties, it's just like a modern thing. They're like, ew. So Frank thinks that way. So Ray, at this point, now that he's heard it more from Frank, he's heard both sides, he decides he's going to go down there and put a stop to it. So he goes down. We see Debra in the middle of one of it, and now we can definitely see there being lecherous old men. We get that a little bit in the first one, but it's a little bit more obvious here now that we got that reveal from the other ones. And Ray doesn't really care. He goes and tries to talk with Debra, and Debra's doing her usual, like, why are you acting crazy, Ray? And then Ray brings it all up, and of course all the men are there, and you know, they take a little bit of offense to it, or as Debra and Marie would probably put it, they take severe umbrage. Even though I don't know how many of the characters would understand what that word means. But they take it. And then Frank shows up and he admits, yeah, he went on it, but you're essentially lusting after my daughter-in-law here. Stop it. And it's only when Frank comes out and says something that Debra seems to actually believe it. And of course, even though this is something she was looking forward to, it's now been kind of tainted by the fact that the men have been oogling her, undressing her with their eyes, as it were. Now, of course, for the epilogue little joke scene, we get a little bit of Turnabout's Fair Play, where Ray goes over to his parents' house while Marie has her bridge club over. She exits the room, Ray drops something, and they're oogling his backside. Now, of course, dirty old lady is like, hypocrisy much? But, of course, it ends on a nice little funny moment where they're like, yeah, Debra, if I was Debra, I'd be treating him better. Stuff like that, where seems like they're making fun of the fact that Debra and Ray. The Debra and Ray are not as lovey-dovey as they should be. Sorry if there was a jump there. I guess pushing one of the buttons does that. That's really all there is to talk about. I mean, like I said, it's a simple premise, and they do it pretty well. Probably one of those episodes, like I said at the top, watching it a couple more times, I'll appreciate it more. But this time, definitely appreciate it more than the last time. It is a fun episode. It's a premise, like I've said time and again, that could have been earlier in the show, but I think it fits better this late in the timeline since we know the characters more. And plus, they're a little older. There's not really much else to say about this one. Now, the next episode is going to be a fun one to revisit because it's another one centered around Allie. It's one that you couldn't really do when the kids were younger, unless you made Ray and Debra meet earlier, unless them having to have kids that are a little bit older. Now accounting for the fact that they are getting older. And it's one that is very apt when you have mainly a daughter as the oldest, and you want to start doing things and don't want to hire an outside babysitter. I think you can already see where the premise is going. Until then, everybody.